Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is the second part of the audiovisual recording for the top 10 things you might find in a pharaoh's tomb. Before I begin, please let me direct your attention to the correct part of the lesson. Once again, this is part 4, and all you really have to do is just fill in the chart with characteristics defining each item. And the whole goal here, really, if you will, is to think about the cultural components of to why Egyptians included certain parts in a pharaoh's tomb that they did. Keeping in mind here, the focus is not just on the pharaoh, but it's also on the greater Egyptian culture. All right, so let's go and get started. And remember, you can replay any part of this presentation that you might need for clarity later on. Here are the top 10 things that you might find in a pharaoh's tomb. The first here is a sarcophagus. Ancient Egyptians were mummified when they died and the body preserved then wrapped up in linen. Pharaohs were mummified with amulets and jewels inside the linen wrappings and then buried in lots of coffins inside coffins to protect the body. For example, King Tut's body was put aside in a solid gold coffin with a gold death mask that showed the boy king's face. This coffin was placed inside 2 elaborately painted wooden coffins which fitted inside each other. Then it was placed inside a red quartz sarcophagus to keep them safe. This was placed inside gold shrines, each one bigger than the last. As you can see, here's a sarcophagus depicted here. Next is 4 canopic jars. When ancient Egyptians were mummified, their organs were removed. The liver, intestines, lungs, and stomach were placed inside special containers called canopic jars. Each jar had the head of a god to protect what was inside, and the heart was left inside the body, because Egyptians believed it would be weighed in an afterlife to see if you had led a good life. King Tut's beautifully carved canopic jars were placed inside a gold shrine and buried with them. Wall paintings. So tombs were covered in beautiful wall decorations that told stories. In the pharaoh King Tut's tomb, the walls told the story of how Tutankhamun would travel to the afterlife, from his burial procession to the passage through the underworld and into the afterlife. This was the journey Egyptians believed that all people took after death, and they filled their tombs with objects and paintings to help them get there. The Egyptians also painted spells for the Book of the Dead around the tomb, and this was the book of spells the Egyptians believed that helped people pass on to the afterlife. Food. The journey to the afterlife was long, and so Egyptians were buried with food, water and wine to help them in their travels. In Tutankhamun's tomb, archaeologists found 36 jars of vintage wine and 8 baskets of fruit. Clothing and jewelry. Beautiful jewelry and clothes were buried with the pharaoh so that they could travel in style to the afterlife. Tutankhamun was buried with over 50 garments of the finest linen, including tunics, scarves, gloves, and headdresses. He was also buried with lots of jewelry, including bracelets, buckles, pendants, necklaces, rings, and scarabs. For protection. These people did such a great job, of course, putting together gold and precious stones that there were also fans to keep them cool too, and one was made from ivory with huge ostrich feathers. Number 6, boats and chariots. Pharaohs might be buried with boats, and the pharaoh Khufu built the Greek pyramid at Giza as his tomb, and buried next to it was an enormous ship, nearly 45 meters long. Some archaeologists think that it was a solar barge, a ritual vessel to carry the pharaoh from the sun god Ra across the heavens. Tutankhamun was buried with 11 boat paddles, but no boat. Maybe Tutankhamun didn't like sailing because there were also 3 chariots and around 130 walking sticks made from ebony, ivory, silver, and gold, so he could ride or walk into the afterlife. Number 7, oils and ointments. Pharaohs might be buried with their favorite perfumes and oils made from the most expensive materials. In Tutankhamun's tomb, there was still a little bit of perfume left in the 1 alabaster bottle. Archaeologists did tests and found out that it was made from coconut oil and frankincense. Number 8, weapons. There were a lot of weapons found in Tutankhamun's tomb, and to protect him on the dangerous journey in the afterlife, some were just show and probably hadn't been used before, like huge shields and 3 heavy golden chariots that were so big they had to be put in his tomb in smaller pieces. Some might have been Tutankhamun's favorite weapons so that he used in battle, but they might have been there to help him once he got there. Throwing sticks, a bit like a boomerang, were found in his tomb, and archaeologists think that they were for hunting birds in the afterlife. Number 9 is games. Did the pharaoh Tutankhamun love board games? Well, he was buried with an ivory traveling set of the game Senate. Perhaps they didn't want him to be bored on the journey. We're not totally sure how Senate was played, but it looks like it might have been a 2-player game with the aim of knocking your opponent off the board. And then, of course, a curse. You know, the Egyptians were really superstitious when it came to, of course, mummifying and embalming the dead. Most pharaohs' tombs were empty long before archaeologists found them because grave robbers had, of course, raided them and taken the expensive treasures inside. But in 1922, the archaeologist Howard Carter and his team found the tomb of Tutankhamun. Grave robbers never got to the treasures inside, and the tomb was intact. This is how we know so much about what might have been in a pharaoh's tomb. But mysterious things started happening. Members of the team fell ill with strange diseases and some even died. Was this a curse of Tutankhamun? Keep in mind, this is still a heavily popular subscribed to thought in terms of superstition in regards to the deceased inside tombs and pyramids alike. So there you have it, all the top 10 things you might find in a pharaoh's tomb. Please go ahead and at this time complete the rest of your chart right here. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope you found this to be a huge help.